it was a very timely reminder to all of those detractors that we're not just talking about one of the all-time greats here. We're talking about the GOAT. The GOAT.
How big of an own goal can you score? Like you're out there trying to promote your movie. You're there on F1 business. You're not even there as a guest. You're there on F1 business, and you won't talk to Martin Brundle. Sorry, mate. And then to make Martin Brundle apologise for it. What?
Has Lando proven himself over the past couple of races, Shez, that yet and still, as at 2024, that we are watching a two-tier championship in that there is Max and there is Lewis and then there are the other 18. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Shakedown podcast. With me as always, my friends, my brethren, my right honourable colleagues, the one they call Baxty and the one they call Shazinho. How are you doing, chaps? It doesn't matter how you are doing because we've got some F1ish to talk about, because this weekend just gone was the Silverstone Grand Prix, at which one Sir Lewis, Carl Davidson Hamilton won one of the most evocative, emotional, overpowered victories that we've ever seen in Formula One history. So Baxty, to that you say what, sir?
So Cameron, I've been waiting 2 years for this day since I started this podcast. Last week it was to dump on Max, and now it's to revel, to bask in the glory of a Lewis Hamilton victory. Like, oh my God. Honestly, did not see it coming. Was very pleasantly surprised. I think obviously there are, the people are going to rightly point to the McLaren strategy disaster class and everything else. But you know what? It was so emotional, so beautiful that I made a bloody Titanic edit of it. Um, but no, it was awesome. It was a great race as well with the changeable conditions. The McLarens were super quick. Max was slow right up until the end, and then he was lurking like he always does at the end. George was desperately unlucky, but had really good pace. British 1, 2, 3 in quali. It was awesome, just so awesome, and it exemplified everything that we love about Lewis Hamilton. Just getting himself to the front, taking advantage of the circumstances that are there, and then perfectly preserving his tyres so that he could keep Max Verstappen behind him. Because when Verstappen went past Norris, I thought that was it, game over. Max is going to just fly past him, and it's going to be another one that got away. But that isn't what happened, because Lewis proved to everyone that he's not washed. He's still got it, even as he approaches 40. And it was a very timely reminder to all of those detractors that we're not just talking about one of the all-time greats here. We're talking about the GOAT. The GOAT.
Oof. Do I not hate that? Baxter, I think you might be barking at the wrong tree. Shez, to that you say what, sir?
Uh, what a great race. Like all memories of 2023 boredom are banished. This is peak F1 right now, right? We've got multiple teams who are in it to win it every single race. And it's forcing uh, if we didn't think that Max was absolutely on it the whole time before, we know that he's on it right now. And then to see Lewis do what he did, and it wasn't. I don't think it was just in that final stint, or even when the rain came down. This was him having planned something from the Saturday onwards. Raising the ride height on his car so that he'd have a little bit more stable downforce for the race, and then making that pay in the rain, making it pay in the final stint, making the right calls when to come in, when to stay out. It was great. It was vintage. But the thing for me was that final stint meant that we had the two greatest drivers on the grid right now going at it hammer and tongs, and they kind of made an interloper of the guy that probably had the car to win the race.
Of whom are you talking, Shez, for the sake of the viewers?
Guy in papaya named Lando L Norris.
All right, so go on and let's talk to this quickly. Did Baxley? Let me pitch it at you. Did Lewis Hamilton win this race, or did Lando Norris lose it?
I'm not gonna sit on the fence, but I'm gonna say that it was a mixture of both because, and I think Oscar Piastri had the pace to win the race as well. If they hadn't have done that first poor strategy call by leaving him out that extra lap, which basically killed any chance he had of winning the race. I think that yes, McLaren lost it with a poor strategy call and a poor pit stop as well, which by their standards is unusual. They don't normally do bad pit stops. I think other than Red Bull, they are the team that you would rely upon to put in that clutch pit stop under pressure. But we've also got to acknowledge how good Lewis was in that last stint in keeping Max behind. I think we saw, he and Lando went on to the same tyre compound, but Lewis brought his in slightly differently to Lando. Lando got them in straight away and they burnt out. Whereas Lewis brought his in more gently, had more tyre life in them, and that is what allowed him in those last few laps to keep Max Verstappen at bay. Because if he'd done what Lando had done, Max would have just sailed right up to the back of him. DRS, thank you very much. Bye-bye, see you later. I get another win. And we hear the Dutch and Austrian anthem combination for the 967,000th time in a row.
So Baxley, to that point, let me ask you a question, because you remember a couple of races back, everybody was crying sabotage by virtue of the fact that Lewis wanted to put on soft tyres in the final stint of the race and do I want to say 15, 16 laps. And we all said...
What, in Canada?
Yeah.
He didn't want to put softs on.
Did he not ask? Didn't he say, haven't we got, what tyres have we got left? And they didn't tell him that they had softs even, because assuming that he wouldn't be able to do...
He wanted the hard tyre. I remember that he wanted the hard tyre. It's like, I think if they'd given him the option a la Lando Norris in Silverstone, like they did, do you want to cover Lewis or do you want to cover Max? I think he would have gone, I'll take the hard tyres, because the soft tyre on it, yes, I know he's kind of proven the point this weekend, but I don't think on that track, on that particular day, he would have been able to do what he did.
It's interesting that, Baxley. A lot of the sabotage merchants have come out and said, hold on, Cameron. To me specifically, Cameron, this is proof positive that he could have done the final stint on soft tyres. He did it then in similar conditions, damp-ish. You say nonsense, Shez.
Yeah, different day, different track, different degradation. That the whole point about Silverstone is that it has slightly better degradation characteristics, much more consistent degradation characteristics. So if you bring the tyre in, the tyres will degrade much more predictably than they did in Canada, which had a much more the surface had been relaid at that at Canada for this year. So the softs, I think, would have burnt out much quicker. And that was the information that all of the teams had. Merck not specifically, because I don't think they ran the soft in practice during the Canadian Grand Prix weekend, but the information that they had was that the softs would have burnt out. And they
were the compounds the same? Were they both like C3s or something, or were they different?
They've been using the softer end of the tyre range for the last couple of races.
They could have both been C5s. I wonder if they were maybe slightly softer at Silverstone. I don't know.
Yeah, perhaps.
Somebody put that in the comments, please.
Let us know. Fact check. It's interesting that you guys. I want to loop back to Lando and Piastri, but before I do that, chaps, there's something. I think there's something that we're missing. Probably owing to my very noddy line of questioning. I've only cried at the hands of F1 a couple of times. Like one was, in fact, one was very recently. Vettel with the bloody Roland Ratzenberger Austrian flag in there. That was tear jerking for me on stream again. And then the other was, of course, 2014 Abu Dhabi, Sir Lewis Hamilton's second victory again. And that was the story of vindication. Everybody said he was washed, and his was a story of potential unfulfilled, and then that felt like vindication. And this Silverstone story, again, Lewis probably said it better and more succinctly than I ever could, that he didn't know. He wasn't sure himself whether he was ever going to win another F1 Grand Prix again, and that's when you get the tears. And it's Abu Dhabi 21, and it's catharsis and it's vindication all rolled into one. And I couldn't help myself when I saw Lewis hug his old man, when I heard him struggle to communicate over the radio to Bono saying I love you, man. And then you get, again, Abu Dhabi 2021 settings where Lewis has to sit down in the car for a prolonged period of time and compose himself as he tries to hold back the tears. I'm like, this is all too, as far as like emotional, this is far too much for me. I can't even cope. Full hay fever settings and sobbing like a baby. Like when F1's like this at its most evocative, like how do you like your F1? Really, like it's, do you know what I mean? You can't replace that. Let me ask you about, did you cry, Shez? Did you shed tears as well? Bloody Nora. Baxter, did you shed a tear as well?
Tears in the eyes. As Mrs. Baxter can tell you, I have a heart of stone and I don't cry at anything other than when she walked down the aisle. So just like one singular tear just rolled down. Mate,
you are a hard man. Talk to me about McLaren then, chaps, because I'm sure, fact check me, tell me I'm nutty, but I'm sure I heard Oscar Piastri communicate back to the garage that the mediums were the tyres to be on. So why then did they have that conversation where they expected Lando Norris to meaningfully contribute to a conversation around which tyres he should be on without putting forth, even as an option, the medium tyre shares? How did that conversation happen and McLaren not be incompetent?
Incompetent, I think, is the word, right? There were a few too many mistakes there. There was the Oscar double stack that they didn't do.
Nuts.
There was trying to give Lando the option of what tyre he should go on, when I think more than one commentator on Twitter has said this, that it's fine to offer your driver the option of wet versus dry, but to try and expect them to know what compound to go on to, I think it's probably asking a bit too much, especially when you're in the middle of coming down the pit lane for a competitive pit stop. That's not the time to make that decision. But there were also driver issues as well. So the reason that pit stop was slow was because Lando missed his marks. And then, as you say, Baxty, he came out on the softs, and I don't know if it was because he had Max sort of right behind him, but he just burnt out his tyres in a car that over the past few races we've seen has been really kind on its tyres in the final stint. So
yeah.
So it was a combination of I think driver, pit, strategy and race engineer all combining. And Cameron, we've talked about this. I think Baxty, we have as well, that you can put this down to McLaren not being used to being in that position, and I get that. I'm totally behind that, but they've had a few races now, right, where every single race where they could have won a race, you hear Lando afterwards going, yeah, that was one that got away. Yeah, that was one that got away. Yeah, we could have done this better. We should have done this, and we would have won the race because of it. And you're finding that their competitors are not doing that. They're not letting them off the hook. And eventually, when they suddenly don't have the car anymore, they're going to rue all this and go, well, that was our opportunity. We missed it.
Yeah.
Wow. This is techie as far as McLaren are concerned, because I don't disagree with you, Shez, but I feel like their car has come on leaps and bounds, right? And it's almost like their operational infrastructure hasn't developed at the same rate that they're. Do you remember the other day, Baxty, when you talked about Carlos Sainz, that he's a works driver and he wants to drive for a customer team? I feel like that same analogy carries through to McLaren, that their car is works level, but their operational infrastructure and their strategy, everything else, is like customer team level. And it just, I want to be patient with them and give them some time. I feel like it's almost unreasonable of us to expect, as F1 fans, grizzled F1 vets, for them to just like hit a switch and all of a sudden move and operate as if they're Red Bull, because that takes years. Well, how long have Red Bull been at this, and how many times were they making mistakes before they became? This is McLaren are just. This is them This is them breaking their own virginities. You're not having it, Shez.
No, because Red Bull had eight seasons of sitting there not winning, and even in their winning seasons, you could probably say 2010 was a season where they made a few mistakes and left a few wins on the table, but from there on in, it was bam, 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 like non-stop. And throughout the 8 seasons where they were on the in opposition, as it were, they honed their pit stops, they honed their operation, they made sure that they didn't make strategy errors. All of that was there. McLaren, through all of that time, we've said this on this podcast, right? That when McLaren weren't winning, they got themselves down. They were the first team to get themselves down to a less than 2 second pit stop. So it's not like they haven't done the work. It's just when it's time to cash in, they're flopping it on strategy, and that's a problem.
Baxty, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think you just have to listen to the two radio messages between the two drivers where Tom Stallard and Oscar Piastri had a very collaborative conversation where Stallard said, look, we believe that the medium tyre is the correct tyre to be on, and Oscar agreed. That is how it should have been with Lando. They should have said to him, look, we think the mediums are the best tyre here. Now, if Lando overrules them and go, no, I want to go on the soft, fair enough, but if you're giving a racing driver a choice of do I chase the guy in P1 or cover off the guy in
loaded
P3,
question settings, right?
Yeah, you're always going to cover the guy in P1.
Do you want to win, Lando? Or do you want to lose?
Exactly. Whereas I think what they should have said to is, look, we're going to put you on the medium tyre. Hamilton is on the soft, but we're going to offset you on the medium because we believe that you will keep those tyres in better and it will give you better pace towards the end of the race.
There's something to this that there's clearly, I don't want to say they're afraid of Lando, but that communication of like the Sochi communication still front and center of their mind. I was
literally about to bring that up. Like it had eerie similarities to that of giving the choice. Whereas actually, if you remember back then, Mercedes initially gave Lewis the choice, and then they said, Lewis, get your ass in the pit. What happened? Lewis ended up winning the race because Mercedes made a decisive call. McLaren need to iron that out of their game, and you've got to hope that they learn from it, because there is still a very real possibility that they could win the Constructors' Championship this year. Yeah, because Sergio Perez has been so bad, bad that Max can't do that legwork on his own anymore. He could last year, not this year. And it's starting to become a real problem for Red Bull, and McLaren just aren't quite taking advantage of it. I mean, they did score more points than them this weekend, but they threw away a 1-2. Let's be honest here. They did throw away a 1-2. When that rain first started falling, Lewis gets past George, and then all of a sudden, those McLarens were like rockets. They were gone. It was over. It was a private contest between the two of them. They screwed over Oscar Piastri, and then they screwed over, well, Lando did screw himself with the poor positioning, but that was mixed in with a poor strategy call when they should have been way more decisive.
Let me nail this one super quick as we round third base, because there's two more topics I want to cover. Lando, in the way that Lando's driving, so it's specifically I'm talking about his very speculative move around the outside of Sir Lewis, Carl, Davidson, Hamilton, turn 1, lap 1 settings. Has Lando proven himself over the past couple of races, Shez, that yet and still, as at 2024, that we are watching a two-tier championship, in that there is Max and there is Lewis and then there are the other 18?
Yeah, but do you see what the difference is between those two that you just mentioned and everybody else, right? That Max and Lewis have both won championships. They know how to do it. They know when to attack and when to hold back. The others are still, there's a mix of inexperience and having to show that they have what it takes, right? So I don't really blame Lando for squeezing Max a little bit at the start in Barcelona. I don't particularly blame him for leaving his car on the outside in Austria. And I can't blame him for trying to have a go around the outside of Lewis Hamilton at the beginning of the British Gran Prix either.
But you can though, Shez, just a little bit, because listen, I've said a gazillion times that Lando wants to understand that you can't race Lewis or Max as if they're Nicholas Latifi, because you're going to come off on the bad end of that equation every single time. If you're going to try and overtake a Lewis or a Max, then you've got to set it up properly, right? 4D automotive pugilism, leverage some 200 IQ race it, like otherwise you stand no chance. And the way that he did that speculatively, you saw the way I could almost see Max smiling in his helmet at the sheer naivety of that move. He was like, I'll have some of that, Lando. I don't even need to race you hard. I will go right the way out around that outside into turn 2. You finished. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, but I think Lando just needs a few more races to. He needs more opportunities like that to realize that that's the game. Because at the moment, yes, he's not racing Nicholas Latifi, but the problem is in that situation, he is Nicholas Latifi just with a really fast car. That he doesn't have the lived experience. Okay, that was a weird way of saying it, but he doesn't have the lived experience of being in that position, whereas Max and Lewis do, right?
Go on, Baxter.
Well, I'd like to congratulate Shez on his impending cancellation from the Lando Norris fan base. No, I understand what Shez is trying to say is that Lando's never been in this position in his Formula One career. He's never been at the front consistently. And we saw that with Max in 2021. He'd always been scrapping for wins. He'd never consistently been challenging for P1 week in, week out. And it took him a couple of races to get used to that pressure, and once he embraced it, he was fine. He flew. He's shown that in for me, particularly this season. I'm appreciating Max more this year than I did last year because he's actually winning these races against quicker cars in some cases, and I'm appreciating him a lot more. And I think that's something that Lando needs to get used to. So does George Russell as well. They both need to get used to this because they are now at the front and they've got to embrace that pressure. It took Charles Leclerc a bit of time. It took Carlos Sainz a bit of time. I mean, I know Ferrari are headed that way at the minute, but they are.
Have we got? Is there enough time?
Have I just triggered the
Baxter?
Agenda?
Baxter, what do you mean? It took Charles Leclerc some time, as if somehow he's there. Do you know what I mean? Like this is a bit tech. You know what, Shez? We don't even have time for it. Let me just say on Charles Leclerc very quickly. He's been really, really good this season. If I'm going to give the dude his props and be balanced, I don't want to sacrifice objectivity and truth at the altar of partisanship, etc., etc. Charles Leclerc has had his time, but the problem with Charles is that he absorbs the strategic ineptitudes of Scuderia Ferrari by osmosis into his pores, and it becomes, rather than drag them back to the mountaintop as Michael Schumacher did, kicking and screaming, he almost acts as a catalyst down to the bottom of the barrel. Like he's worse for their mistake. Like he complements their mistakes in this big SH1T pie. It's really, really bad. And then again, so maybe he learns one day and he grows from it. But until he does that, I will continue calling him modern day Jean lazy. Listen, chaps, I know it's Shez. Yeah, you can frown, Shez. You can say what you want, mate. But
because
go on.
Only because Michael didn't have the current strategy pit wall at Ferrari when he was driving.
I've Shez, I've segmented those two things. Like I'm not. I can see.
You put the two of them in the same position.
Well, no.
Sentence.
No. What I've said in the same sentence, but I've clearly segmented for the two as far as the root cause analysis. What I'm saying to you is this, Shez. What Michael was able to do, even in the hard times, he faced down adversity, right? Sometimes he crumbled, Adelaide 1994, etc. But most of the time, he was able to, in the hard times when he was in the trenches, he was able to, do you know what I mean? He was able to function still.
He was never in the trenches against his team, which is what Charles is having to contend with right now.
All right, fair. However, the point that I'm making still stands, yeah? Charles becomes what Charles is like. If he has the car, he's like 110% right. One of the best, one of the fastest point to point that we've ever seen. If he doesn't have the car, Like he doesn't lose 10 or 20 bits. It's like he loses 30 or 40. Like all of a sudden, Charles Leclerc becomes modern day Jean Alesi. And that's my challenge to Charles. If indeed you are that good, chap, then become more assertive and understand, like plug the gap, be the difference, rather than allow the mire of Ferrari's ineptitude to drag you down, to make you lesser than your whole. That's the Charles Leclerc that I want to see. If he's that brilliant, then tack those other things onto your, do you know what I mean? Onto your artillery as an F1 driver. Because as long as you're at Ferrari, yeah, if you don't have them things and you don't have a chance of winning the championship, do learn from Carlos Sainz. Because all the while, Carlos Sainz is just sat there, just accumulating points, right? And nobody's ever going to tell me that Charles Leclerc isn't quicker than Carlos Sainz Jr. So bridge that gap, do the gap analysis, and fix for that. Because he's plenty good enough. Nobody's disputing his pace, but he makes mistakes yet and still. He's not assertive enough, and he allows the mistakes of the team to bring him down more pegs than necessary, as versus a Carlos Sainz Jr. But listen, let me give this to you, because we're rounding third, and this is an important one, more important than Charles Leclerc. Martin Brundle's grid walk. Baxter, let me come to you first. Is Martin Brundle bang out of order for the way that he talked to Sir Brian May?
Don't know, didn't watch it.
Oh my God, Baxter. Calm. Shez, you didn't watch it either?
I did. Of course I watched it.
Go on and talk to me.
Yeah, I was upset about it.
Why?
Because Brian May doesn't know nothing about Formula One. That was his excuse for not talking to Martin Brundle on the grid. I don't know anything about Formula One. No one on the grid knows anything about Formula One. That's the whole point of the grid walk. You're supposed to talk about how you feel about being there. Sorry, mate. That's not a good enough reason. And the fact that, you know what makes it so much worse is the fact that Brian May was there promoting a silly F1 film. He was there because his band's track was backing the trailer, and he didn't want to talk to Martin Brundle. In the same vein as back in Austin, 2021 was it? That Brad Pitt decided that he was too good to talk to Martin Brundle as well.
Mate,
and then decided,
don't even get me started on that. Don't even get me started on it.
How big of an own goal can you score? Like, you're out there trying to promote your movie. You're there on F1 business. You're not even there as a guest. You're there on F1 business, and you won't talk to Martin Brundle. Sorry, mate. And then to make Martin Brundle apologise for it. What? No. That's all I have to say about that.
Shez, it's techie this. It is techie, because people who sit on the other side of the fence will say, well, he's a human being and he's attended an event. Let him just enjoy himself. He's a legend. Like Freddie Mercury settings Queen. He was the guitar. Like, do you know what I mean? Why can't he just come and enjoy himself? You can't... It's not against like human rights to not talk to somebody if you don't want to talk to somebody, even if you are on the grid. That's what they will say, Shez. And to that you say, what, sir?
I say he was there to do a job, promote Formula One, promote the film, and the best way to do that would have been to actually talk to Martin Brundle when he comes around to talk to you.
But supposing he doesn't want to talk, he just doesn't want to talk.
Fine,
he was nervous. He was nervous, and he said
that's fine. But then you're then going to have to face down criticism from people like me that are going to say, well, maybe you should have said something. Like there is a time and a place for not doing an interview, but what are you going to do if the new MP for Cheltenham West or whatever turns up for an interview and says, "Nah, sorry, I'm not happy to have a conversation right now." Like, how's that going to look? You're there. He was there specifically to do a job at promotion, and he didn't do it, I think.
Oof. I don't hate it, Shez. As much as I want to counter you, I think to close, I will see that and I will raise you this. If you're going to come into my house and you're not going to wipe your feet, then don't bother. Don't come in my house at all. This is the house that F1 built, and these celebrities, as at 2024, need to pay the thing some respect. Stop trying to do this privatise the profits and socialise the losses thing. I hate it. I can't. It really, honestly, it gives me the ick seeing these celebrities running up and down the Monaco grid and paddock as if they know anything about F1 when they know nothing of the sort. Meanwhile, there are fans all over the world who would kill to be in that position, having watched F1 all of their lives, and will never get the opportunity. But I digress. Guys, you've been absolute legends. That's been Sir Baxty. He's been Chezinho. I've been Cameron F1. We'll be back same time, same place next week with more F1 automotive pugilism. Between now and then, remember as always to look but never stare.